Mount Gregory Church, a community center, a place of worship, much more than a building. The members of Mount Gregory Church have affected the history of Howard County. The community around the church has been religious for a long time. The church became not just a place of worship, but a community center where people met to socialize, celebrate, and solve problems. The members of the church became like an extended family, helping each other through bad times and celebrating the good together.
It was the Warfield Academy, and then it was given over for the education of black children, because the school at the top and the church was in the bottom, and because it was evidently, from what I can understand, I haven't seen a picture of it. In fact, I don't think anybody has a picture of it, but from what I can understand, there were two levels, and the church was in the bottom and the school was in the top. And that's where black children went to school for a long time.
We have an organist, and his name is Marvin Cornish, and he plays both the piano and the organ. And then we have also different ones that come in that play like the guitar and all of this on special occasions.
A typical church service at Mount Gregory. We open with a devotional service, like with the hymns, singing of the hymns and the praying and everything. And the children, because we always had Sunday school. Like for the children, we had Sunday school every Sunday morning. And then after Sunday school, we went into the regular church service, which was typically the same programs that we have today. I don't think that much has changed as far as the church is concerned.
The building basically hasn't changed. They have changed the altar and they've put in new carpet and things like that. But the building really has not changed that much. In fact, since I've been there in the past, I'd say 10 years, they have we stopped using the basement except for the restrooms. That's where the restrooms are. But we don't use the basement anymore. We used to use it for activities like suppers and things like that. But now, because of health status, we don't use the basement anymore, except for the bathrooms.
I'm just waiting to see, like that new building, what they're going to have in it and all of that.
Are you looking forward to anything in it?
Yes, I'm looking forward to having more classrooms to provide for us, different activities that we are going to have, such as a Sunday school room and, let's see, a kitchen that's bigger where we can prepare meals. And what else? Well, I guess that's about it.
What I have here is a 1851 copy of the old Warfield Academy and how the sanctuary or the Warfield Academy was built. I don't have a picture. I have a footprint, and I can show you where the entrance was, and I can show you the property. Okay, this is the property. This is the Warfield Academy. This is property that was added to the Warfield Academy property in order to make the school property larger, or church property. And I think this is the cemetery. At least that's what I was told. This is the cemetery that was there. And all of these are the documentation, the grantees and the grantors, how they acquired the ground and who they got the property from. And this is what this is. Now this is other deeds of the property, how it was handed down, who it was handed down to. Actually, it was handed to the trustees of Mount Gregory Church. Then it wasn't called Mount Gregory, it was called the Washington Episcopal Church. This is again the Warfield Academy with some expansion. Here, the Warfield Academy School itself had church downstairs and the school upstairs. This is a hitching post where the people used to come to the church in the horse and buggy. And this was the outdoor toilet. This was an outdoor toilet, and this was a coal shed. And this cemetery is still there, but it's shrinking. This is the entrance to the property. Of course, you have to read all of this and all of this and all of that to find out who received it, who was the grantees and the grantors. Again, it changed hands quite a bit. This is covered over for a reason, and I'll show you that when I get to it.
Sorry.
This was adjoining property that the Board of Education purchased from for educational purposes for the school. This is a footprint of the school. 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms. 5 rooms were the original building, but these buildings were added on. This was the cafeteria. This was the agricultural room. This was the shop. This was the shop, which didn't stay very long. It was removed and shipped it somewhere else. And at 47 or 48, I think it was. 40, must be 47, 48. These are the documents that I managed to get hold of. I got them from the land records of Ellicott City. And that's the Cookville Elementary School right there. That's the first class members that moved into the Cookville Elementary School. It was called Cookville Vocational School at that time. Some of these members are still living. That's where I got a lot of information from, just by having conversation, talking, meeting with some of those folks. Some of them are still living. I can call some of them are still living. I don't want to call names because if I call names, I'll get in trouble because I'll miss somebody. Cookville Elementary School, or high school now, and there's the church beside of it. It's adjacent to it. Here I have a footprint of the school. I have a footprint of the church. Now, all of this was church property until somewhere in 1899, I think it was. They decided, it's in here, I can read it, but I don't think I should read it because I'll mispronounce some of the words. This was the church. The church ended up with a 60 by 100. The rest of that property went over to the Board of Education. They acquired it. They have a sum that they purchased it for some. The trustees signed it over to the Board of Education in order to have a which company says they signed it over in order to have a colored school, have a school for colored children in the 4th District or Howard County or Cookville, in this area. Of course, the cemetery shows up because I'm not aware of it being relocated or exhumed or dug up or whatever. Okay? Doing that negotiation with the county after the school burned down. After the school burned down, not the school, after the maintenance department, well, I'm a little ahead of the stuff. The Board of Education, after the school was desegregated, the kids, the elementary children, they went to Lisbon. My children went to Lisbon. But I don't know where the rest of them went. Of course, there were other schools in the location. And the maintenance department moved into the old building. And after the maintenance department moved, well, there's a long story about why they wanted to expand the maintenance road department, the public works department in the Cookville area, but they didn't have space to do it. So they talked to the surrounding, my understanding, they talked to the surrounding property owners, but the property owners didn't want to release any of the information. So they decided, they being the county executive, the county council, and the members of the county council decided to let the member of the church have or turn it over to the school. It tells you here how they acquired it. And these yellow lines, they tell me that this is what was removed from the property after the maintenance department moved out. They had stockpiles of stone here. They had stockpiles of stone and road salt in this area, and they had a gasoline tank and diesel tanks here, but they all disappeared. They dug them up. But still, I'm still showing this cemetery because I don't remember anybody saying or stating that this cemetery was removed or exhumed. The only reason that would probably say it was exhumed is because when the road department used their trucks, they went in this way and they come out this way, or vice versa. Now, when they did some ground survey and excavation, the property now is different from what it was here when the school was there. They dug it all out, and they could have dug it up here. I don't know, I haven't found anything or anything stating or showing that it was dug up. But obviously it was removed. They were removed. The bodies were removed if it was any in there. But I'm pretty sure it was something in it. You get the text here?
I can't.
Okay, but then the only thing down there now, the only thing on that property now where after the county executives or the county council or county members are returned or deeded the property back over to the church owns all of the property now. Now, the reason I have this note here is to myself, but I can take that off now. It still shows that cemetery because here again, I don't know where it's ever been moved and I relocated or exhumed the bodies. Of course, the church still there, and that's about it. Yeah. Of course, you have ideas, have proposals for the new church, but I don't want to go in that because I don't know that much about it. Although I do sit on the building committee.
Mount Gregory has meant a lot to me. It has helped me raise my children. I came here as a widow with 6 small children to raise, and it has helped me raise all my children successfully because none of them have been in trouble with the law except for maybe a speeding ticket. And they've all done well. And Mount Gregory was instrumental in doing that. And they gave my children structure, and they gave my children a reason to go on and to do what's right. To do what's right, that's what it means. Oh, they were different when I first came. They were much different when I first came. Well, one thing, we had more people, and the services were different. And each pastor brings something to the service, brings something different, something that you have never been accustomed to. So it's getting used to when these each pastors is getting used to their pastor and knowing what they're like. And it takes a while. It takes maybe 2 or 3 months if you could get accustomed to their style and everything. But overall, it's good.
Reverend Dixon was at our church for about 16 years. He was very good. He always took us on trips every summer, and he planned different activities for the church when he was there.
Well, it made them aware of that they had been living in dark ages for so long, so when the civil rights movement came about, they sort of came alive, they got excited about it, so we went forward in order to get some things that we weren't getting.
Cookville High School was the first high school for African Americans in Howard County. The struggle to find adequate facilities was long and hard. This marker commemorating Cookville was unveiled February 26, 2002.
Thank you, Dr. Easton. I'm going to make a few brief remarks, but while I'm doing that, would all the graduates please come up and stand here right with me? Because we're going to unveil this marker, and I want you in the photographs and all when we do that.
Thank you.
And if Dr. Gray and
Can I go in?
You guys can go in.
First, let me thank you for inviting me today to participate in this very special event. It's a significant way to close out African American History Month. The building that the marker designates is not here anymore. Obviously, it was right behind us. But it's important that we not forget our history and our heritage, particularly the heritage involved in the African American struggle for education. And while we don't have a building here, I would like to just remind all of you that work is progressing on the Colored School in Ellicott City. It's a project that languished for 10 years and didn't move until we decided if we didn't move quickly, there wouldn't be anything left to save. And that project is on target right now and scheduled to be completed later this summer. And in that building, although we can't say it's the Cookville High School, it will be symbolic of the educational facilities and surroundings that black students had to endure. In this building, during the renovation, we pulled off some interior walls to do the reconstruction. We found behind the wall panel a piece of board, a piece of wood that had been shellacked, and written on it in charcoal, apparently from the pot-bellied stove that heated the building, was a lesson plan and a date of 1885. And obviously we've saved that, and we're working with preservationists right now to find the best way to make sure that that piece of wood, with what it really signifies, survives. Obviously they didn't have money for blackboards or chalk, but they made the most of what they had, and they got an education. And I'm sure the same type of enthusiasm and commitment occurred at the Cookville High School. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today with my friends on the council and with all the graduates of Cookville High School to unveil this plaque. And as not just the students when they ride by 50 years from now, I may not come by 50 years from now, but for all who ride by here to remember what really this marker signifies in terms of what happened in the education of African Americans and their progress toward achieving equality with all Americans. So thank you for having me, and if it's okay, I'm ready to pull it off.
While Mr. Roby's pulling the sign off, would Douglas please lead us in singing the alma mater?
Probably would have gone on.
How did the civil rights movement affect your life at school?
Well, of course we were segregated while I was in high school. As I went on to college, I went to Morgan State College here in Baltimore. I can remember going downtown to picket because, and up to the movie theater at Northwood. Northwood Shopping Center is very close to the school campus, but and that was the only movie theater, the only department store, just stores to shop, and we couldn't go there. So I do remember picketing, afraid, but doing it because I thought it was right to do. It just seemed unfair to have movie theater right in your mouth and you couldn't go and enjoy a movie. Or restaurant and a department store as they had in those days, and you couldn't go and have lunch or dinner. So I do remember doing that. I remember being scared because I thought, I think if my parents knew, they would have been upset with me. But I did it anyway because I thought it was the right thing to do.
What was your opinion of?
Well, civil rights movement, I suppose, and its impact upon me is a little different than you would think in terms of integration of schools or the Harriet Tubman era. For us, the civil rights movement started with such things as, first of all, getting a high school to attend. And that was a long, difficult task. If you look at education for black people in Howard County, it really started in about 1846 when the Freedmen's Bureau started something called the Warfield Academy. The Warfield Academy happens to occupy the same space where Mount Gregory Church stands today. So that was the first educational provision for blacks in the county. And at some point, I suppose in the late 1800s, the county started providing educational opportunities, really. But in 1929, there was a petition on the parts of some of the parents to provide secondary education. And the school did not start, a high school was not started until some 6 years later in 1935. So it took 6 years between the time that parents petitioned for a school, for the school to actually be started. And then what happened, the school was really started by expanding the elementary school by one grade. And after it was expanded for a year, the superintendent made recommendation in 1937 that there be the 2 years, and then finally that it be a 4-year school. So you had 7 years, 7 plus 4, actually. But that was part of the civil rights struggle, as I understand and appreciate the struggle for upward mobility for blacks in Howard County. And every step along the way, not only was there a struggle to get a high school, there was then a struggle to get transportation for the high school, actually. And then there was a struggle to get a good facility. So there was this long, drawn-out effort to build Harriet Tubman High School. And then, of course, well after I was out of high school and out of the county, in 1954, Brown versus Percy Board of Education, the desegregation was declared in the United States, and Howard County finally, 10 years after that Supreme Court decision, Howard County closed its black school and started integrating the schools. And then I guess I'm not personally informed of this, then the struggle really continued, because then you had the matter of displacing teachers and students, and have an equitable distribution of the educational resources and opportunities that integration provided.
The school was very small, very few rooms, very few teachers. I spent the first couple of years in school with the same teacher. And so you do the same teachers all the way through your school career. The ones that you had when you first came in, they were there until you left.
I guess the best thing that I remember were the students who had that will and drive to learn with nothing. Because when we went to Cookville, the books we had were books that came out of the white schools. They were raggedy, they didn't have pages in them, they were written all in. And for a child to come into a classroom with no kind of basic equipment and still want to learn is exciting.
Were you disciplined at school, and how were you disciplined?
Not me. Yes, I was a typical devil. I was, and today we think of things like children not being challenged, that kind of thing. And for me, it was growing up country. That's really what it was. What we call growing up country, and boys foot clean. We wrestled clean in those days, and we pulled little girl skirts. Real clean. So I'd get into trouble for some of those real clean things that I would do. And got away with it until I got to Harriet Tubman. When I got to Harriet Tubman, I met a man who knew my roots, knew something about my family and some of my relatives that had gone ahead of me, who had excelled and had done quite well. And he was not going to accept anything less than that from me. So we had to have a meeting then. He had to give me a telegram and set me straight and turn me around and put me on a path that led to a lot of success for me.
You can see that it worked. What did you wear to school?
The building was, first of all, a wooden structure. It was constructed as an elementary school in the early 20s, and then additional rooms were added on. So they were tacked on from place to place. So if I remember correctly, there was not a hallway in the building. You moved from one room to another room by going through a room. That was the environment actually.
You go through one room, through two walls, like there's passageways through two classes.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It was an old wooden building. At one time it was yellowish looking, and then I think it was painted white. Small rooms, small classrooms. Sometimes first and second grade, when I was there, the first and second grade would be in the same classroom. And one teacher would be teaching both of those grades, like first and second grade. 3rd and 4th grade. I think after me, however, I think it was the classes were separate, but during the time that I was there, because I had Miss Poor Meadows. She was my 1st and 2nd grade teacher. Mrs. Harriet Harity was my 3rd and 4th grade teacher. In fact, I think she only had us that year because she was sick, and we were there like in the 3rd grade. And the 4th and 5th grade was Miss Ruth Salisbury, who I mentioned to you earlier about the division situation. And then the 6th and 7th grade was Miss Poor Meadows. Now, Miss Poor Meadows, and Miss Nana Meadows. And Miss Nana Meadows, she was considered the junior high teacher. Her sister was Miss Poor Meadows, and she taught 1st and 2nd grade. And they lived across the street from Cookville School in a little wooden house. And there was an extra room sort of toward the back of the building that was used for lunchroom. They didn't call it the cafeteria then, it was the lunchroom. You went in there if you bought a hot lunch. Now, initially, when I first went there, you couldn't buy a hot lunch. You had to carry lunch. We call them bag lunches. Another significant thing that I will always remember about Cookville School is that we had to walk. And we had to walk a long ways. Initially starting off, my parents lived with a lady on 97, which is like you're going towards Sykesville now. And as a 5-year-old child, I walked from 97 to Cookville School every morning with my brothers. And then on our way, there would be other children, and we end up with a group of us walking to Cookville School every morning, and we walk home every evening. Of course, in the evening it was more fun because in the evening we could tussle and wrestle and fight and do whatever we wanted to do before we got home, as long as no one told our parents. I like to claim, I guess I would say I like to claim credit for getting bus transportation for the children. And you might say, well, why is she saying that? We were walking home from school one evening, and I was in the 3rd grade. I was 8 years old, and I was playing tag with a young man who is now deceased named Sonny Smith. I ran him on his steps, and I tagged him and ran back out in the road and was hit by an automobile. I was knocked across 144 and ended up in Kernan's Hospital with multiple injuries. And my father went to Ellicott City, and he just talked to the board there, and he explained to them that it was no longer safe for young children to be walking that distance to school. And as a result of my injuries, while I'm lying in Kernan's Hospital in traction, my brother and them were riding on the school bus. So that's how I take credit for getting them transportation to school. And after I recuperated, in fact, I was at Kernan's Hospital for about a year. And I'm blessed that I'm able to really walk around now because legs were crushed and all sorts of things happened to me. And when I came home and I started back to school, because I had such good grades and I did all my assignments in the hospital, I was promoted to the 4th grade. I didn't have to repeat the 3rd grade. But I still take credit for getting bus transportation for Cookville School. And of course, I don't know if my cousin told you this or not, because they told me that it was a shame I had to almost get killed to get them transportation. So it was a going joke amongst the family members.
Well, let me say it this way. I remember Cookville Elementary High School, okay? Because I went to elementary school 1 through 7 with lovely teachers, dynamic teachers, energetic teachers who wanted their students to learn. High school was a step for us, even in Howard County. It was the only school we had. And they were eager principals and teachers that came to us. They wanted us to learn. We wanted to learn. We wanted to seek knowledge, which had been denied us in the past. I would say the teachers that came to us were very, very good teachers. I mean, they had every child at heart for learning. And from the first day, we thought it was maybe a little rough, but we learned to deal with it. We knew we had to have discipline, which was taught at home first. And as Mrs. Kraft has said, Mr. Kraft was the principal that came when I entered high school. Very dynamic, and I used him as a model.
I remember this high school as a very friendly environment where there was real interest on the part of the faculty for the student welfare in their learning. These were very difficult days in Howard County for educational provisions. You probably recall that this again was right after the war, and there had not been a strong economy in this county, so educational facilities were nothing like the fallacious environment that you study in. These were makeshift educational environments. Nevertheless, the teachers were genuinely interested in the students and their ability to learn, and the parents were interested in advancing their children. So I remember it almost as a family setting.
A typical day was walking to school. There was a couple of classes, then a recess. Class, lunch, short recess after lunch, then class, and then we got out.
Homework was done for me mostly at school because we didn't have enough books to really go around to all the students, nor did the books have all the pages in it, because they were used books. When they got to us, they were used books. And so we did most of our homework at school. And the things that we had to take home with us, it was written on the blackboard so that we could copy it and take home with us.
We had much more homework than we wanted to do. That's always true of school. We'd be school if they didn't give you more homework than you wanted to do. But when in my younger time in school, we did not have electricity. And the home that I was born and raised in, some of you will see when you go out to Route 144 and turn toward West Friendship. Just on the right-hand side, it's a small log cabin. And there were 9 of us there. And we had one table to study on. There were 7 children and parents. We had a kerosene lamp. And so we had a certain time to study. You finished your studies within about an hour, all that you were supposed to do. And every night, 9:30, everybody went to bed. So you had a certain amount of time to do your studies, a certain amount of time to do the chores. We raised pigs, chickens, things like that. So that the homework that you had to do, you had to get help to do, but you had to do it in a hurry. And it seemed like you never went to school fully prepared with your homework.
Yes, my parents were, and I was active. I remember even the meeting that set up the all-countywide PTA. I remember very well Mr. Kraft motivating the parents to join together from across the county to try to acquire better educational facilities. And I still remember one statement he made that evening in trying to tell the parents how important it was for their children to exceed them in their accomplishments in life. And he used a phrase, he said, "There's nothing wrong with cutting cotton or chopping corn, but cut your own cotton, chop your own corn."
Well, of course, we were very glad it opened. We had spent a lot of time through the effort of our parents and other students, too, to get the school built and to get it open. The closing of it was a great disappointment to me and to many other people, because we felt, of course, I am now chairperson of our 50-year reunion, which we're working on right now, and we felt that the integration of schools meant that white people would be coming to that school. I mean, it still was a wonderful place. I mean, people miss something by not coming there. So that has probably very little to do with the white students in the school, nothing to do with them, or the white teachers or anyone else. It was the way the Board of Education saw, and the way not only this Board of Education, but throughout the country, what they saw as the integration of schools. They saw as the integration of schools giving black people the opportunity to go to school with white people. What they did at the same time, we had 7 elementary school principals and 1 elementary school and 1 high school principal. They demoted all of them to teachers and put them in the classroom and closed the school. Now, that is the closing of the school that is important, rather than whether or not the building was in use. The fact that they destroyed a whole community of education and had no appreciation for the value of what had gone on there as an educational institution, so that they would make that value available to other people, and indeed to express the fact that it was valuable, but rather felt that it should be abolished, and that it should be, well, devalued. And I think that that loss will never be recovered.
The best thing I remember about the school, I think I indicated maybe in my previous answer, was its friendly atmosphere. The fact that you were made to feel as if you could move from where you were as a student to some point that you were dreaming about along some path, and you were helped to reach those goals. That's what I remember best about the school, actually.
What about the worst?
The worst is that it was a poor facility, inadequate in terms of laboratories, because they did not exist. By that I mean chemistry lab and biology lab or physics laboratory. Inadequate in terms of ventilation, because there was no central ventilation system. It was simply a room heated by a stove, actually, or in the hot weather, ventilated by open window space. So it was a poor physical plan. But since that was all we had, and I saw nothing better, that was not a nuisance factor at that point. It was simply something that you endured.
The best thing that I remember, getting an education was the best thing, and being able to go from there into life, that they prepared us for. Although we had limited facilities, limited books, and all of those things, we had teachers. As I said before, we had teachers who really cared and really visited us whenever we had a problem. So it was really, all those things put together, I think, made it a very pleasant place to be.
The Cookville High School information, in preparing our 50th year reunion, we're reviewing photos and all material we can get from the Cookville experience. And I see pictures and things of people that I'd forgotten about. And it has refreshed my memory of how romanticized we have become about Cookville School, and some of the things that happened there that told us that we really did need a better system of education. Let me just add one thing. One of the problems with education in those days for black people was that there were not enough students in the school to qualify for enough teachers. In those days, and I don't know how it is now, the number of teachers were assigned to a school in relationship to the number of students in the school. We were less than 3% of the population of the county, so that we only qualified for 8 to 10 teachers. In that 8 to 10 teachers, you're not going to get people who are qualified to teach physics, trigonometry, and all those courses that you're going to need. We had no language teachers. We didn't have. You could only get admitted to a land grant, like University of Maryland or Johns Hopkins, if you had foreign language. We didn't qualify for enough teachers to be able to have a foreign language teacher, physics teacher, or other such specialized teachers to qualify you for admittance to the standard universities and colleges within the state. That's an oblique way in which discrimination operates against a person who's being discriminated against. There's nothing outright that's discriminatory about it is that's not the way the system is structured. So that as we graduated, say from Cookville and from Tubman, we didn't qualify in terms of what the qualification requirements were to enter Johns Hopkins or the University of Maryland or the other principal institutions of higher learning in the state of Maryland. I personally went to Johns Hopkins as I graduated in 1952, took the entrance exam and qualified to enter engineering school. But even though I passed the entrance exam and qualified to enter, I could not enter because I didn't have foreign language, I didn't have trigonometry, and other things that, although Mr. Gibson was a teacher that taught us those things. There are subtleties like that still in our education system that the people upstairs understand and keep going. They not only have to do with people who are black, they have to do with certain things. We were students. There's nothing we could do about that. Didn't understand it until the effect was felt. I'm convinced that there's still things that happen like that to students. We have no way of understanding what it is that the system is doing, but there are certain things built in that will keep you from reaching your full potential. And that's always hard. And that's it. As far as I'm personally concerned, that is, in addition to teaching the traditional values of a culture, the other purpose of education is for those who are brought up in that culture to be fulfilled, to become all the potential that they have to come, because that improves the culture. Well, our education system's main problem in that day was that they had selected some of us who were not going to have that experience. And that's what I call the black experience in Howard County. It is the problem of Cookville High School. There are many things happening there that are good, but it should have closed because we should have been ending the era of that kind of experience. We had the same experience Harriet Tubman came out of Harriet Tubman without enough, with the same kind of limitations, and which I believe may be overcome today.
Behind me is the site where Cookville High School once stood. Cookville High School was the first high school for African Americans in Howard County. The struggle for adequate facilities and supplies was long and hard. Finally, with the integration of African Americans into public schools, they had achieved the supplies and facilities that they deserved just as much as any other student. The battle had been long and hard, but everything turned out just fine.
Yes, I would like to commend you for doing this project. For whatever reason you started it, I commend you. And I would encourage you to continue it. Because during the course of your interviews and compiling your data, you will, like so many others, you will unravel some of the history. And, you know, there is an old statement. All man ever learns from history is that we won't learn from history. You understand? Some things should not be repeated. The future is in your hands, and it'll be molded in large part by your experiences and the information you'll gain from your research. So I think it is outstanding, and I would encourage you to continue.